Matthew chapter 16, Jesus took his disciples to Caesarea Philippi, north, near the Lebanese border. And there he asked them, "Who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered right away, of course, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And right after that, Jesus began to speak directly into the life of that disciple. It was as if he said, "You've correctly identified me, now I'm going to correctly identify you." Jesus told this disciple that he'd have a new name, that his character would change, and that he would become a man of great authority and power in the kingdom of God. He prophesied to him the type of disciple that he would end up being. Immediately after that incredible exchange of words between Jesus, the Master, and his chief disciple, Peter, there's another exchange that's written here in Matthew chapter 16, beginning in verse 21. And here it says that Jesus began to tell his disciples at that point that he would be taken to Jerusalem, he would be accused in front of the scribes and the Pharisees, and he would be killed, but he would be raised from the dead on the third day. And then it says that Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. And he said, "No, Lord, heaven forbid it, Lord, this will not happen to you." And Jesus' reply to this remark from this same disciple was, "Get behind me, Satan, for you're setting your mind not on the things of God, but on the things of men." Then Jesus began to say to his disciples that if anyone wanted to follow him, they would have to take up their own cross and follow in the way that he was going. That if anyone wanted to keep his life, he'd really have to give it away. And anyone who tried to save his life would in the end lose it. This was a shocking thing, I believe, to the disciples, and it's clear that they could not have understood all that this was about. I believe that Peter really puzzled over this, and he wondered, why did Jesus turn on me and correct me so harshly when he had just told me I'd had great revelation from heaven? What is this thing about him? He seems to be fixated on death and resurrection. And I believe this shows that Peter, as well as all the disciples, they were not ready to go all the way with the Lord. This was the truth that God had spoken throughout generations to Israel, to his chosen people. This truth about sacrifice and offering, and going beyond the sacrifice into life. Here was Jesus beginning to explain to his disciples that he himself would be their sacrifice, and that they would be required to follow him. But their eyes were on this earth. Their thoughts were about the lives that they were living here and now. They weren't ready to go beyond with Jesus. But when they did, that's when they began to discover the power of the kingdom. And so it is for each one of us. We are called by our Master to be his disciples and to go beyond the things of this world into the things of this kingdom. This truth about sacrifice is what God had spoken to Israel from generations before, when he'd chosen Abraham and commanded Abraham to take his own son to the mountain of sacrifice and offer him there. And it was God's intention to show that life in his kingdom begins beyond the sacrifice, beyond the things of this life, when we take our mind and our hearts off of the affairs of this world and we go beyond into the things of eternity, the things of the kingdom. Jesus was leading his disciples to that place. And so he leads us by his Spirit, those of us who will follow him, not only in this world only, but will follow him beyond into the power and the reality of his kingdom.